Let's get right to our panel now. Karen Finney is a columnist for The Hill and former DNC communications director and an MSNBC political analyst. And Ari Melber is correspondent for The Nation and an MSNBC contributor. Good day to both of you. Ari, you'll remember in 2010, really in the heyday of the Tea Party, that people were screaming and attacking the healthcare bill. Do you think there'll be a similar type of protest, given the fact of what the Supreme Court has found, and also that the presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, actually implemented a mandate himself?
Yeah, I think the contrast to recent history is you have a standard bearer for the Republican Party that obviously was fine with this program at a minimum at the state level, but also talked about it as a national model. And then two, what is really significant here, which is sort of the constitutionalization of our political differences. We had an open debate for a long time about whether this bill was constitutional. We live in a place where we still have the rule of law. And we have a court now that has said this is affirmatively constitutional. They have answered that question, and we, as citizens and the government, will now abide by that. So I think that undercuts part of what the Tea Party has done. I love that they talk about the Constitution. I love that they want to talk about American history. But when you start to treat the Constitution as a symbol of what you wish it were and not what the court says it is, you are actually not upholding the way the Constitution works in our system of government.
Indeed. Karen, I want to play a new healthcare ad by Karl Rove's Crossroads Super PAC. It's an attack on the Democratic candidate for the Senate in North Dakota. Take a listen, Karen.
Heidi Heitkamp promised.
I would never vote to take away a senior's health care or limit anyone's care.
But Heidi endorsed Obamacare.
That ad basically implies that she's lying, but I want to play for you the original ad that they're quoting.
I'm Heidi Heitkamp, and 12 years ago, I beat breast cancer. When you live through that, political attack ads seem silly. I would never vote to take away a senior's health care.
So congratulations to Karl Rove. He's hitting a woman who was talking about overcoming breast cancer.
Yeah, it's really classy, isn't it? Look, having lived through this during the Clinton years, I can tell you this is the kind of very nasty distortions that we're going to be seeing over the course of the next, several weeks. But here's the thing, Martin, and I think this goes back to your question, Ari, about the Tea Party. Remember that politically speaking, Mitt Romney has to win independents. This is about the independents. And they have to be worried that a little bit too much of the extremism, remember what we saw from the Tea Partiers and this kind of very extreme ad, again, a woman who overcame breast cancer, that's not going to appeal to independent voters. If you're someone for whom those kind of attacks work, you're probably already not voting for President Obama. You probably already support Mitt Romney. So I think you remember that in the context of this election, Mitt Romney has a very fine line to watch in terms of keeping that far right-wing Tea Party base with him and still appealing to the more moderate independents in this country.
But Ari, to your point, is Karl Rove respecting the Constitution by running ads like that, setting aside the most distasteful nature of the content?
Well, I don't think he's breaking any rules. That might be a problem with the rules, right? The fact that so much of this stuff gets so dirty, and sometimes in his case we can trace it back, but as you've documented, in many cases we can't find out who the donors are and who's responsible for communications, and that I think is a shame. The other point here, though, that I think is important is all of this is sort of, all of the arguments about the law are sort of bookended here by this really ridiculous vote that we had in the House about holding the Attorney General in contempt, something that has never been done before and something that was timed in a really odd, I would say, suspicious way. So
people would say deliberate way, right, but there we are.
And well, I'm being as fair as possible.
You are.
And I'll go, Karen will get in here in a sec. The only point I want to finish with is that this is the problem as we go into a general election context, is we have a lot of high-minded talk from elements of the right wing about law and justice and the rules.
And
the rules are here. The Constitution is here. You have to respect what the Supreme Court did, and you have to look at the precedent to understand that pursuing the Attorney General in this way does not respect a normal boundary.
Indeed,
right.
Karen.
And remember that Karl Rove is the person who has tried to win elections by scapegoating gay and lesbian people, by scapegoating immigrants in this country. He is the guy who is all about fear-mongering. So, of course, he is going to attack a breast cancer survivor and take her words out of context if he thinks it's a cheap shot and a good way to get a few votes. That's different than loving the Constitution and believing in the Constitution and following the law. This is where the tactics are going to meet up with the reality of the law.
Karen Finney and Ari Melber, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.